She chose him her boss over everything we built. But what she didn't know was that I had already set a trap, one that would bring their perfect world crashing down. This is the story of how betrayal turned into my unexpected revenge. My name is Ryan Keller. I'm 38 and I run a small but successful accounting firm in Denver. Numbers make sense to me. They're honest, always adding up, unlike people. For most of my adult life, I believed my marriage was built on the same kind of logic, solid, dependable, something you could count on. Rachel and I had been together for nearly 10 years. We met in college when she was studying marketing and I was buried in finance textbooks. We built a quiet, stable life together. She had recently landed a position as a senior marketing manager at a well-known tech firm. She was proud of it, and I was proud of her. We had our routines, morning coffee in silence, shared glances over dinner, her head resting on my shoulder during late-night movies. It wasn't fireworks every day, but it was ours. Comfortable, familiar, safe. But looking back now, I realize comfort can sometimes blind you to change. It started with small things. Rachel began working late often. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was climbing the ladder, pushing herself. I admired that about her. But soon those late nights turned into weekends. Then came the business trips. Her phone was always face down, her laptop always open. She was present but distant, like someone had dimmed the light behind her eyes. I asked her once if everything was okay. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said she was just stressed. New responsibilities, she said. My boss expects a lot. I believed her. Maybe I wanted to. The truth is, I didn't want to rock the boat. I had my own stresses, clients, employees, deadlines. I figured the best thing I could do was give her space and support, be the understanding husband, the rock. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was heavy, full of words we weren't saying. I wish I'd asked more questions. I wish I'd trusted my instincts sooner. But I didn't, because at the time, I truly thought we were solid. At first, I chalked it up to ambition. Rachel had always been driven, and I admired that about her. She used to talk about breaking the glass ceiling, making a name for herself in an industry still dominated by men. So when she started coming home past 9, I didn't complain. I made dinner. I waited up. I told myself this was part of the process, temporary. But temporary stretched into routine. Some nights she wouldn't come home until almost midnight. Other times, she'd text me saying she was staying in a hotel because she was too tired to drive back. She said the company was expanding and her boss needed her on back-to-back calls with clients in different time zones. I tried to be supportive, I really did. But something started to change in the way she looked at me, or maybe it was the way she didn't look at me. Her eyes didn't linger anymore. Conversations grew shorter. Her laugh, the one that used to fill our kitchen, faded. She stopped asking about my day. She'd nod along as I talked, but I could tell her mind was somewhere else. With someone else, maybe. The name Ethan kept coming up. Ethan had this great idea today. Ethan wants me to lead the campaign. Ethan said he sees leadership potential in me. I remember the first time I actually saw him in a photo she showed me from a team outing. He was clean-cut, probably in his 40s, the kind of man who always looked like he just stepped out of a boardroom. He had that confident, effortless smile. I felt something twist inside me. Jealousy, maybe. Insecurity, definitely. I wanted to ask her about him. But how do you ask your wife if she's growing too close to another man without sounding paranoid? So I stayed quiet, swallowed it, told myself it was just work. But the silence between us wasn't normal anymore, it was a canyon. And she was drifting farther away with each late night, each skipped dinner, each, sorry, I'm too tired tonight. There was a moment, one night around 11:30, when I stood in the kitchen, reheating the same plate of pasta I'd made hours earlier, and it hit me. I was starting to feel alone in my own marriage. It was a Thursday evening. Rachel had left her phone on the kitchen counter, something she almost never did anymore. She used to scroll through her socials right before bed, laughing at memes, sending me things to look at. Lately, the phone had become an extension of her, always in her pocket, always locked, always face down. That night, she was in the shower, and for the first time in 10 years of marriage, I hesitated, then picked up her phone. I didn't want to snoop, I didn't want to find anything, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, and maybe she had already let go. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. The screen lit up with a text from Ethan. Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. I froze. I stared at the screen, heart pounding so loud I thought she might hear it over the running water. My hands trembled as I scrolled up. The messages were all there, weeks of them, long threads full of flirtation, innuendo, and worse. He called her Ratch. She called him E. They joked about late-night meetings, about pretending to stay at the office. One message cut through me like a knife. I wish you didn't have to go home tonight. My knees went weak. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone still in my hand, mind racing. It wasn't just emotional, it was physical. It had been going on for a while, and she hadn't even tried to hide it, not really. Part of me wanted to scream, throw the phone, burst into the bathroom, and demand answers. Another part of me just felt hollow. How could she? How could the woman I built a life with, the woman I trusted, lie to my face, kiss me goodnight, and then give herself to someone else? I didn't move until I heard the water turn off. I quickly placed the phone back where I found it and walked into the living room like nothing had happened. She came out wrapped in a towel, smiled faintly, and walked past me to the bedroom. I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't, but something inside me had shattered. And I knew there was no going back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing beside me. It felt like a stranger was lying there, not the woman I married, not the one I had built a life with. I kept waiting for the anger to rise, but it didn't. Not yet. Just a deep, cold numbness. The next morning over coffee, I finally asked, "Are you in love with him?" She didn't even look up. She kept stirring her cup like I hadn't said anything. But I saw it, that tiny flicker in her eyes, not shock, not guilt, recognition. "Ethan," I added. My voice barely made it out. That made her freeze. She looked at me finally. Her face was unreadable, lips parted like she was about to lie, then didn't. She set her spoon down. "How long have you known?" I wasn't expecting that. No denial, no tears, no explanation. "I saw the messages," I said quietly, "last night." She sighed, not the kind of sigh you let out when you're caught, the kind you let out when you're tired of hiding. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, staring down at her cup again. "It just did." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No apology, no fight for us, just defeat, indifference. "Were you going to tell me?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know, I thought maybe it would fade, maybe it was just a phase. But I don't feel the same way about us anymore, Ryan." That broke something in me. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that she'd already let go a long time ago. And I was the fool still clinging to a picture of us that no longer existed. "I've been here trying," I said, my voice cracking. "I've been showing up every day, supporting you, believing in us." "I know," she said, "and I'm sorry for that, but I can't fake it anymore." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I just stood there, staring at the woman who once promised me forever, now telling me she didn't want it anymore. She walked out of the kitchen. And just like that, so did the life we had built. The days that followed felt like walking through smoke. Nothing was clear, nothing made sense. Rachel packed a bag and left the following week. She said she needed space, but I knew what that really meant. She moved in with Ethan. I didn't ask, I didn't have to. Our friends tiptoed around it, no one wanted to take sides, and the house felt like a tomb. It's strange how silence can be louder than shouting. I wasn't the yelling type. I never had been. That's probably what made this whole thing worse. I kept everything inside. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the shame. I couldn't even bring myself to tell my parents the full truth. I just said we were separating. They looked at me with quiet concern but didn't press. One night I was sitting alone in my office, going over client portfolios, trying to distract myself, when Ethan's name popped up in my mind again. Not as her lover, but as a professional. See, I'd met him before, twice. We were at the same charity gala once. I remember shaking his hand. He was slick, polished, the kind of guy who smiled without blinking. I didn't trust him then, and now I started to wonder. So I did what I do best. I followed the numbers. Ethan was a high-ranking executive at a tech startup, one that was gaining attention for explosive growth, almost too explosive. I'd heard whispers before, quiet talk in financial circles about inconsistencies, cash flow gaps, funny patterns in expense reports. I had no proof, not yet, but now I had motivation. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about accountability, justice, about not letting men like him walk all over people like me just because they thought they could. And Rachel, if she had hitched her wagon to him, knowing what kind of man he was, if she had thrown away 10 years of marriage for someone like that, then maybe she wasn't the person I thought she was either. I wasn't going to do anything rash. I wasn't going to break the law or act out of rage. But I knew how to read balance sheets. I knew how to trace money. And I knew exactly where to start. I spent the next 2 weeks digging, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. It gave me something to focus on, something that didn't feel like drowning. Ethan's company Nexora was private but rapidly scaling. Too rapidly. Their numbers didn't add up, at least not to me. Growth like that was supposed to be sustainable, but Nexora was spending faster than they were earning. Public-facing documents looked clean, but I noticed patterns that didn't sit right. Like inflated marketing expenses, overlapping vendor contracts, and recurring payments to consulting firms that didn't even seem to exist. This was my domain. Where he had charm, I had patience. Where he had power, I had precision. I wasn't trying to get Rachel back. That part of me had died the moment she chose him, but I couldn't stop thinking about how he walked into my life and wrecked everything with a smirk, and she let him. So I made a quiet call to a friend of mine, Michael. He worked in corporate compliance and had ties with a few federal regulators. We'd gone to grad school together, and I'd helped him out of a financial jam once. The kind of favor you never forget. I just want someone to take a look, I told him. Off the record, there's something fishy here. He didn't ask too many questions. A week later, he called me back. You're not imagining it, Ryan. There's definitely something going on. This could turn into something serious. It was like watching the first domino fall. More contacts got involved. Quiet investigations started. I kept my name out of it. I didn't need credit. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted truth to catch up with arrogance. Meanwhile, Rachel still hadn't reached out. I saw glimpses of her online at company events, standing beside Ethan, always smiling, always polished, like nothing had happened. But I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the same man who had stood there crushed while she packed her bags. I had changed, hardened, focused. And they had no idea what was coming. I'll never forget the day it broke. It was a Monday morning. I was in my office, sipping coffee, going through emails like any other day. Then I got a message from Michael. Turn on the news now. I clicked on the live feed. There it was, a Nexora exec under federal investigation for financial fraud. Ethan's smug face plastered across the screen, next to words like embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, and potential SEC violations. My heart didn't race. I didn't cheer. I just sat there, still, steady, like watching a storm you knew was coming finally roll in. The story exploded. Reports of falsified vendor contracts, offshore payments, and falsified marketing spend hit every major financial news outlet. And because Rachel was head of marketing, and some of those inflated expenses had her name tied to them, her face showed up too. Nexora's marketing head resigns amid scandal. That was the next headline. From what I gathered, she wasn't directly involved in the fraud, but she'd signed off on numbers she didn't understand or bother to question. That's the thing about ambition. It can make you blind to the details that matter. She was forced out within 48 hours. Ethan, he was done. Investors pulled out. The board threw him to the wolves. By the end of the week, he was facing formal charges. I watched all of it unfold from the quiet of my home office. Alone, calm, not gleeful, but not regretful either, just complete. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't tell anyone I had a hand in it. No social media jabs. No, I told you so. That wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to win her back. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth finding its way to the surface and me reclaiming my peace. I did find out through a mutual friend that Rachel tried to get in touch with me after it all went down. She called twice, left one message. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Let the silence speak now, like it did when she walked away. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw her again. Nearly 2 months had passed since the Nexora scandal blew up. The news cycle had moved on, but the wreckage it left behind hadn't. Ethan was out on bail, his reputation in ashes. Rachel had disappeared from the public eye, no job, no spotlight, no photos on social media, just silence. Then one evening I opened my front door and there she was, standing on the porch, hair damp from the rain, clutching a small umbrella and a paper bag. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. "I brought your favorite, that Thai place you like. I wasn't sure if I could come in." I stepped aside. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I was curious, not about getting her back, but about what she had left to say. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to eat takeout and laugh over dumb movies. But everything felt different now. The space between us wasn't just physical. It was the weight of betrayal, of choices, of time lost. "I messed everything up," she said, eyes glossy. "I thought I was chasing something better. I thought I was building something new, but—" He lied to me about everything, and I let him. I listened, not with anger, just detachment. She kept going, talking about the fallout, the interviews she couldn't land, the friends who stopped calling. She said she felt ashamed, alone. "I miss us," she whispered. "I miss you, Ryan. I think I've always loved you. I got lost." She reached across the table for my hand, but I didn't move. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "But I'm not the same man you left. You made your choice, Rachel, and I lived through it. I rebuilt myself without you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Can't we at least try?" I shook my head, not with bitterness, just honesty. "I forgave you, but that doesn't mean I'm still yours." She left not long after. This time I didn't feel hollow watching her go, I just felt free. After Rachel left that night, the house felt quieter than ever, but it wasn't empty anymore. It felt like space had opened up inside me. A room I hadn't known was there, waiting to be filled with something new. I started waking up without the heavy weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. I smiled at little things again. The morning sunlight through the window, the sound of birds outside, a cup of coffee that tasted a little better each day. I began to focus on myself. I reconnected with friends I'd ignored during the hardest months. I signed up for a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. Slowly, I rebuilt my life piece by piece, not as someone trying to fix what was broken, but as a man discovering what he really wanted. Work became a refuge and a challenge. I threw myself into projects with renewed passion and a clearer mind. I realized that I had been so focused on holding on to a marriage that was crumbling, I'd forgotten how to hold on to myself. Every now and then, news about Rachel and Ethan would pop up, quiet whispers of new legal battles, rumors of bankruptcy, and faded headlines. I didn't follow closely. I didn't want to be tethered to their story anymore. Instead, I chose my own path. One evening, as I was editing photos from a recent trip to the mountains, I felt a calm I hadn't known in a long time. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had made peace with my past. I didn't need to hold on to anger or hurt. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, least of all Rachel or Ethan. I was finally free. And that freedom was the greatest victory of all. It's been nearly a year since everything fell apart, since Rachel chose her boss over our marriage, and the financial trap I set changed the course of both their lives. And me, I'm not the same man I was back then. I'm better. I learned that life doesn't always go as planned, and sometimes the people you love the most can hurt you deeply. But what truly matters is what you do afterward, how you pick up the pieces, how you decide to move forward. I still think about Rachel sometimes, not with bitterness but with a quiet understanding. We both made choices that shaped our futures. Hers led her down a dark path. Mine, it led me to rediscover myself. I'm dating again, slowly, cautiously. I'm learning to trust, to open my heart without fear. And work, it feels different now. It's not just about success or proving anything. It's about fulfillment, passion, and balance. Most importantly, I'm at peace. I'm no longer defined by what I lost, but by what I've gained: resilience, clarity, and hope. The past is a shadow I carry, but it no longer controls me. A new chapter is waiting, and I'm ready to write it.